My name is Kevin Maxell Ostrom. I have a company called Maxwell Cycles, and it's been officially in business for 3 years, closer to 10 if you count all of the hobby and plinking around with ideas and things.
Okay.
I do road bikes, mountain bikes. I've ended up doing a lot of prototype development for companies. They have a part of a bike or something that needs some work. I'm based out of Petaluma, California. There's a great community of builders and people, which makes it difficult for a new builder. But
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about the genesis of this bike.
So I've always been into motorcycles. I have always wanted an early 1900s board track racer.
Uh-huh.
When I was a lot younger, you could probably get them at a reasonable price. So it's a Excelsior Henderson. It's a Super X. It's a big valve motor. It's a 1000cc V-twin. They made them from 1915 to 1919. And in the early 20s, truck racing got the kibosh. So I like the aesthetic. So Indians, Harleys, they were long and low and flat, and they weren't sexy. There wasn't a lot going on. But you look at those big valve motors, and you look at the frames, and the top tube was curved, and the tank wasn't just this flat plate with these angular sides. They radius the edges, and they contour the sides of the tank. And it was just a really beautiful bike. Super narrow, capable of 100 miles an hour, which is crazy on a bike with no brakes. It was essentially a beefed up bicycle with a really ginormous motor in it.
What are the main features of this bike that you would like to tell us about?
Okay. So power plant wise, it's based around a Crystalite 3540 hub motor. The hub motor is mounted in the frame, so that motor does spin in the frame. This is the hub motor. This is the Crystalite 3540. It's a pretty robust system. They generate about 1,500 watts in their max power capacity, so a little over the standard legal limit. But considering the weight and the size, it's just enough when you're pedaling to keep you mildly entertained. The stock configuration uses a 52 volt, 20 to 30 amp battery system. It's not hugely expensive, and it's not extremely powerful.
Uh-huh.
This battery architecture, so this is my own design, it's proven to be very unstable. I have a lot to learn about battery management systems. So this system is actually capable of generating about 5,000 watts, which is well above the legal limit. But it was more of an exercise in battery design and how can I get that raw mechanical feeling, that aesthetic that you get from these early motorcycles, and bring it over into an electric vehicle. Every electric vehicle I see, they have an aesthetic, but they're very, very clean, and it doesn't bring out the mechanical nature of a bicycle. So I wanted to do that and try to do it in a somewhat tasteful way. The drive system, it has pedal power and motor power. It is a direct drive from the hub to the rear sprocket. Now I have some options available. This is a pretty narrow system, so there's not a lot of room to put a free hub body on that. But with the new boost and some of the other new standards coming out, it gives me some room to play with my drivetrain for the motor side, which is excellent. Integrating the rear drive sprocket and the disc brake and the caliper mount, so nice clean system, and easy to service. The cycle analyst, so that is dashboard for speed, battery life. So it'll give you a number of discharge cycles. It'll tell you watt hours used. It'll tell you voltage available. It'll give you temperatures for your motor and your battery, so you can monitor that when you're running them, which is a really nice feature. All of the connections that don't really fit with something of this aesthetic are all inside the tank, this faux gas tank. So you unbolt, motor controller lies here, all the connections, a capacitor for the back EMF on D-cell, and fuse for any shorts that happen. So all of that stuff is contained inside here, so it's out of the way. And I have ridden it. I tried to ride it in anger, and that's where I've come up short on my battery management system. And that capacitor I was talking about, that ultra capacitor, that's been the thing that I was lacking mostly. When you decel, especially with a direct drive, the motor essentially turns into a generator, and now it's feeding all of that power back into the system and causes all sorts of issues. Wires short out, batteries short out, controllers short out. There's any number of things can go wrong. But now what that capacitor does is that capacitor takes that recharge and stores it. So now when you go back to using, it actually can feed it back in a more controlled manner, and prevents the system from being damaged. It rides very nice. It's made much more for speed than it is for cruising around. That'll need to change. The fork, the design and the aesthetic on the fork is exactly what I needed, but it's not stiff enough, and it needs some work. One, for the weight, and two, when you go to put a larger disc brake on there, it needs a 203 millimeter. It's just, these are far too small. Even at the regulated 20 to 25 mile an hour top speed for an e-bike, there's about 50 pounds.
Yeah, there's a lot of mass here.
So there's a lot of mass to stop. So on the rear, you run dual 200s or run a 210 inch, or, so you can pick up some tandem disc brakes. Yeah, it's
okay. So this is very much like early medium prototype kind of stage.
Yes.
And what's it called? What's the name of the bike?
This is just called the XO1.